You're unable to use it now, but in due time, your body will learn Sukuna's curse technique.
Yo, what?
Welcome back everyone, and it's time to go ballsy! We talked in this video about how Itadori went from an ordinary boy to the home of the most fearful cursed spirit in the Jujutsu world. And whilst this even rightfully scared the higher-ups of Jujutsu, the strongest Jujutsu sorcerer, Satoru freaking Gojo, not only saved Itadori, but also went a step further in revealing an important effect of Yuji being Sukuna's vessel. Gojo states that Itadori will be able to use Sukuna's powers down the line. When this eventually happens, and it will cause a disruption in Jujutsu Kaisen, because we've seen how absolutely broken Sukuna's abilities are in the Shibuya incident. If you forgot, he played around in his fight to the death with Jogo, who was a special grade cursed spirit equal to 8 to 9 fingers of Sukuna. And most shockingly, he also easily took out the strongest Shikigami of Megami's 10 Shadows technique. He beat General Maharaga, the same spirit that killed a 6 Eyes and Limitless user in the past. This puts everything into perspective as to why Gojo believes the grading system of sorcerers is outdated, because characters like Yuji Itadori will go way beyond the parameters of the system that has been put in place, and he is someone that can reach the peaks of sorcery much like himself. So I'm here to answer the question, how can Itadori unlock Sukuna's curse technique? Well, first I need to get everyone in our community on the same page. I know you already have the notification bell on, you're watching our other Jujutsu Kaisen videos, but trust me, we must talk about Sukuna's significance in the story for this to make sense. Jujutsu Kaisen as we know it right now can all be traced back to Sukuna's existence in the Heian era. He was a terrifying shaman turned cursed spirit who couldn't be destroyed, and his soul had to be stored in his fingers even after his so-called death. These fingers became indestructible even by Satoru Gojo. But other than being the worst nightmare of the Jujutsu world, Sukuna also embodies the ultimate form of Jujutsu sorcery as a parallel to Satoru Gojo himself. Gojo is the pinnacle of power of Jujutsu sorcery, blessed with 2 curse techniques and infinite curse energy. He self-proclaims that he is enlightened amongst all the sorcerers and is the being who is the honored one. After this event, Gojo became undefeatable and the strongest in history. Now you're probably wondering right now, well ABD, I don't understand. What does it mean to be enlightened? Enlightenment is a core concept of Buddhism that means a state of perfect knowledge or wisdom, and all practices of Buddhism aims to achieve this state. The same is deeply ingrained in Jujutsu Kaisen's story, because Buddhism is the very base of Jujutsu. In chapter 74, during the Nara period, which is 1200 or so years ago, Master Tengen spread Japanese Buddhism and preached what would become the foundation for Jujutsu sorcerers. The only difference is that in the series, Enlightenment means a complete understanding of curse energy. After all, it is the base of everything. Every curse technique exists through it. Since curse techniques are basically the manifestation of a sorcerer's curse energy, much like Hamon and stands in JoJo, yeah, that was just a JoJo reference.
Holy fucking shit! Is that a motherfucking JoJo reference?
Let's get serious. Understanding curse energy to its full extent means understanding yourself. And whilst this is very philosophical to say, understanding yourself isn't easy. This fact is attested by how a lot of sorcerers can't use extensions of their curse techniques, like domain expansion, black flash, or reverse curse technique. We saw how Gojo tapped onto his true self, and as he says, the core of his curse energy. This was during his fight against the sorcerer killer Toji, and it looks like even Sukuna has achieved the same state of enlightenment. Sukuna and Gojo are character foils to each other in most aspects, such as their morals, unstoppable strength, and their positions in the Jujutsu world. From day one, Sukuna has been set up as the ultimate antagonist that Gojo and his students have to defeat in any way possible, including killing their own friend Itadori. At the same time, Gojo's birth shifted the balance of the world towards the sorcerers. Therefore, Sukuna's existence in the same era as Gojo balances out the cursed spirit side. Sukuna represents the notion Akutami, the creator of Jujutsu Kaisen, is very fond of. People are inherently morally grey, and they have to pick their sides, even if that means being completely evil and menacing like Sukuna is. But more than this, Sukuna is very crucial to the plot, because the fight with him is the true test of Gojo's students, or as he puts it, the new generation of Jujutsu sorcerers. When we talk about the new generation of sorcerers, we can't just leave Itadori out of it. Itadori might be the main character, but he has been set up as a vessel that is bound to die. So having anything close to a happy ending in this manga, it seems impossible. But there's much more to his role than just that. If he was just meant to die, he would not have to go through the anguish his mortal enemy Mahito forced upon him. Much of Jujutsu Kaisen's moral questions, like what is the purpose of life, originates from this conflict. Itadori had been beaten, yet he still stood up, evolving his sense of morality each time. However, this path hasn't been all that kind to him. Itadori had to change his goody mentality of saving everybody and understanding even the cursed spirits to learn more about cursed energy. We saw him go from wanting to simply exercising Mahito to eventually killing him. This difference highlighted Itadori was no more the innocent, naive boy we saw in chapter 1 of Jujutsu Kaisen. This equivalent exchange concept is present at multiple places in the story. For example, telling the enemy about one's curse technique to boost up its effectiveness. Even the whole ploy of binding vows in the story is based on this barter. The bigger risk a sorcerer takes, the greater the reward from it. In the same vein, Itadori had to give up his innocence and learn about himself and his cursed energy, whilst Mahito tortured his very soul at any given chance. This was surely a huge price he had to pay, and hence the knowledge he gained is deeper too. In fact, Itadori's clash with Mahito ended up with the enemy realizing his true and final form. He found the true essence of his soul, something that he had been chasing ever since his first fight and introduction with his natural counter Itadori. But where does that leave Yuji? Well, Itadori is walking the same path of enlightenment as Gojo and Sukuna, which means he is learning about the core of his cursed energy and how to use it. This will help him better achieve his goal of giving people a proper death. With every happening in his life, Itadori has learned new things to adapt himself to, even though they might be trivial or depressing. The manga has confirmed Itadori has no innate talent for curse techniques. He is limited to his curse energy usage in the form of Divergent Fist or Black Flash. But mastering the Black Flash isn't a joke. Even Nanami felt like he got lucky with his consecutive Black Flash record of 4, whom Itadori matched within his first year of sorcery. Moreover, even Satoru freaking Gojo can't use Black Flash at will, which shows how difficult that feat was. Interestingly, Nanami even went a step further to describe Black Flash as a zone where manipulating curse energy becomes like breathing. Black Flash also marks a milestone for a sorcerer because it is the purest form of understanding the essence of curse energy. Quoting the manga, for those who have experienced Black Flash as compared to those who have not, their understanding understanding of the essence of curse energy is immeasurable. As time moves on, in chapter 132, it is stated whilst fighting Mahito in his true form, there is not a single Jujutsu sorcerer who can use Black Flash at will. However, in this fight, Itadori made it seem like he was. All of this proves the fact that Itadori being able to use Black Flash almost at will, that his journey attaining enlightenment is getting closer. With every battle of his, he is gaining a step forward to understanding the core of his curse energy that Gojo had wanted him to learn. At the end of the day, curse energy is the same for everyone, but the way they manipulate it is unique to each sorcerer. That is why each and every person has their own journey to their own enlightenment. Like we saw with Gojo, it was him fighting to death with Toji, someone coming so close to killing him that he was forced to think about reverse curse technique. Remember, Gojo gained his power through understanding the core of his curse energy. Gojo from birth knew he was special and the strongest. At a young age, assassins couldn't even touch him as he could detect anyone and beat everyone. So when Toji forced him to rethink his stance in life, as he was the first and only person to defeat him, he gained enlightenment through experiencing death. Similarly, we know Sukuna's emphasis on true Jujutsu, which tells us that he also understands the core of curse energy. Thus, Itadori's journey involves facing a plethora of enemies with different viewpoints against the ones that he grew up with, especially against his idea of a good death to everyone in his pilgrimage to enlightenment. If you take a look at Yuji's progress from chapter 1 to 132, it comes full circle. He states to Mahito, "I'm you. I wanted to reject you, convince myself that you were wrong, but that doesn't matter now. I'm gonna kill you. Even if you come back as another curse, I'll kill you. Change your name and form, I'll kill you again. I don't need to find meaning or a reason." Initially, Itadori used to deny Mahito's plight and his ideological beliefs of what shapes a soul and how a human's true nature is corrupted. But now, he understands that the wrath and negative energy that created his superior curse energy output, it is a required evil to kill curses such as Mahito, as that would result in protecting more people and stop more negativity or evil from reoccurring. Therefore, more people around the world would have a good death, which is what Yuji yearns to achieve for them, which means, yes, humans are morally great. There is no right and wrong in everything. Itadori's role in the big picture of Jujutsu is just like a cog to exercise curses and protect people through all that he can, even if it means using Sukuna's powers. We saw him beg Sukuna to save Junpei after Mahito's cruel use of idol transfiguration on him. From this incident, we know that Itadori is just an ordinary teenager, not an elite sorcerer or a fearful curse like Gojo and Sukuna, yet he still has to walk the path of enlightenment. In this case, Itadori's enlightenment goes beyond what he already has. Todo's lessons to him whilst facing Hanami is proof that he has the ability to go beyond his natural threshold. Also, keep in mind his supernatural strength and circumstances of his birth, as Kenjaku has manipulated his entire life to exist solely for the purpose of being Sukuna's perfect vessel and made sure he would eat his finger. Moreover, in his fight against the Death Womb curse paintings, Choso and Keshizu, it was told that Itadori is loved by the Black Spark or Black Flash because of his supernatural physical abilities. He might not have an innate talent for curse techniques, but the curse or blessing in disguise given to him by Kenjaku made sure that Itadori even surpassed Maki Zenin at the time when it came to the sense of combat. It is all more important to know how curse energy is the path to enlightenment because of how Maki realized her true self through it as well. In her case, it was the loss of curse energy she shared with her twin sister Mai. When her sister passed away, Maki came closer to realizing the core of Jujutsu and her own self, which is why she became all the more powerful. It makes sense for someone like Itadori, who stands next to such powerful sorcerers, to also begin understanding Jujutsu Jujutsu completely because of his natural talent. Overall, from a logical plot perspective, currently Itadori has reached his peak on his own. He is fluidly using curse energy against powerful enemies and skillfully defeating them without wasting much of his own energy. So what is Itadori's enlightenment? The story has made it clear that it must have something to do with unlocking and using Sukuna's powers, as Gojo had thought. Both of these concepts are interrelated because of Itadori's peculiar condition. Ever since the Shibuya arc, Itadori has learned to slowly accept Sukuna's presence in him. Before that arc, it wasn't as much of a problem, but the massacre by Sukuna's hands at Shibuya shifted something in him. In order to defeat Mahito, he had to see everything from his enemy's perspective and even admit that he was the same as Mahito, even though it was a painful thing for him to do. He had detested cursed spirits like Mahito and Sukuna the most, but now he was accepting his fate. However, as traumatic as accepting his life's truths are, Itadori's fighting style and his development is much different ever since he started his journey of enlightenment. We already know from Choso's testament in chapter 138 that Itadori has indeed made incredible progress in using curse energy, as well as getting healed from battle wounds, even going as far as calling him a demon in his own right in chapter 139. And so, taking Sukuna's presence and consequences onto himself, it's the first step, and Yuji has already done so in chapter 166. But it's not as simple as you think, as his curse technique is so opposed to Itadori's nature that it poses another moral dilemma to him. In contrast to Itadori's caring and empathetic nature, Sukuna's technique is just like its owner, cold, brutal, and harsh. So him accepting that Sukuna's soul is within him for good and that he can only do what is in his limit as a Jujutsu sorcerer instead of a hero, it will definitely unlock Sukuna's powers for him. But there is a final step that he must do to achieve enlightenment. Using Sukuna's powers will be a hard thing for Itadori to do, emotionally speaking. We've established that he's realized that curses are purely evil and must be eradicated. He is a lot closer to knowing himself than before. But once Kenjaku reveals the truth of his origins and how he is his son technically speaking, it will force Yuji to take upon another gut-wrenching truth, that his birth was manipulated from the very beginning to be Sukuna's vessel. He is the embodiment of Sukuna, so he must embrace him. As he stated to Yaga when the story first began, he is the only person in the entire world that can retain Sukuna's fingers and soul, the only human that can destroy this evil spirit that causes so much harm to others. Itadori has to swallow this harsh pill with the most pain he has ever experienced in his life, but with that pain, his enlightenment will come. So if he willingly takes the evil and controls it himself, he can allow lesser people to suffer at the hands of cursed spirits who are more powerful than him. We know Yuji is capable of this self-realization in his pilgrimage to enlightenment, because when he was about to lose all hope against Mahito, he understood Todo's philosophy that helped him push past the barriers that were holding him back. Todo stated that looking for meaning or logic in death can at times defile the memories of those we've lost. This of course led Yuji defeating Mahito in his self-discovery, admitting he is like him, unlocking more powers, and understanding his own curse energy more. Similarly, as Itadori is the amalgamation of suffering and pain a sorcerer goes through whilst, conducting the job, he will learn the truth about his birth, that his life was molded to be a vessel of death incarnate, Sukuna. This will further push him to despair, like when he almost found out that Nobara could possibly be dead in chapter 126. However, this pain seems to be a requirement for Yuji's progression, because then he can understand the suffering of his parents and what they went through and remember them, because he admitted he can't for some reason. That's because the truth relies within those memories. If one cannot remember their own parents and their unconditional love, how can one truly know themselves? Where did Yuji's loving, empathetic, and caring nature come from? Therefore, Yuji Itadori would have to learn the truth and its burdens, that his birth was orchestrated for death incarnate, but the meaning behind behind it can be molded to meet his own desire, not that of others, which is what Satoru Gojo has been teaching his students like Megami on what a sorcerer must be: selfish for themselves. Therefore, Itadori will finally understand the core of his curse energy, just like Satoru Gojo achieved. Itadori's ideological belief will be to use Sukuna's powers to preserve life, rather than taking it away. With Sukuna's technique, he will climb up the ladder of grades and be equivalent to a special grade sorcerer. Itadori has dedicated his entire life to dying in order to lessen the evil in the world. But so far, the bad has far surpassed the good. All his life choices are an illusion because they were all predetermined for him. But to some extent, what he does beyond his identity as Sukuna's vessel is something that is up to him. How he walks the path of enlightenment, that is what will determine his worth as a Jujutsu sorcerer. After all, as Yaga said, no Jujutsu sorcerer dies without regrets. Itadori is already burdened with the weight of killing hundreds of people, and incidentally making Kenjaku even more powerful. When he learns the truth and gains his memories, he will be overcome with grief and regrets. Hence, the only way for Itadori to cope with his reality, whilst also fulfilling his wish, is to accept his circumstances and find his true self. It comes back to the concept of how enlightenment in Buddhism relieves a person of suffering. But other than just this, Itadori unlocking Sukuna's powers also ties into the ultimate dream of Gojo, to fix the Jujutsu society from the inside. Satoru Gojo teaches his students with a single aim in his mind since day one, making them strong enough to support their morals that are different from the archaic Jujutsu society. He firmly believes that no power is dangerous if it is wielded by the correct hands and if the person is shown the path to doing so. Itadori is the manifestation and the test of this dream. Gojo saved him at Megami's whim and even took all his responsibility, but more than that, he also saw him as a sorcerer instead of a vessel. In a society that would rather kill than give a chance to its own harbingers, the sorcerers, Gojo picked placing his faith in his own and students' judgment. Itadori unlocking Sukuna's powers and controlling them himself, he will become a juggernaut that Jujutsu society will have to recognize, which sounds a lot like Gojo himself. But succeeding at this will mean Gojo's efforts over the years have not been in vain, and he saved creating another Suguru Geto amongst his students. And these students will also work on the same morals and walk down the same path that believes in strength before the family clans, circumstances before consequences, and intention before action. This will be the need in the new world of Jujutsu in Gojo's imagination, because Itadori realizing Sukuna's powers will also disrupt the society. The meaning of special grade will be lost because there will be so many powerful Jujutsu sorcerers that the line of distinction will slowly blur out. It is especially all the more important because people like Maki and Hoji were refused to be acknowledged by Jujutsu society. In a morbid way, Itadori is the biggest breakthrough for Gojo and the realization of his dream. Now, this was a pretty long and detailed video, but we also talked about Itadori's unavoidable death, as the author himself has already confirmed that him or all the other characters will die. If you want to understand Jujutsu Kaisen's story even more, go watch the video being displayed to you right now.